Hey folks, welcome to part 3 of our 3-part series here on mental stress in youth sports. And today we're going to take a look at the topic of stress versus nerves. I think that we've all been in a situation where we were really stressed out or anxious or had to deal with intense nerves. And I remember the first time when I was really exposed to what I would call like true stress or anxiety or nerves over trying to perform in front of people. It was when I was in 4th grade and we were all supposed to give a speech in front of the entire school. And so I thought that I was ready to go, nervous, but ready to go. So I get up there and then I literally felt like I could not open my mouth. Like it felt like it was just shut. And I tried to open it to unclench my jaw and I couldn't do it. And my jaw also felt like it was fizzing, like it was like a Coke bottle that had been shaken up and then it was just all at the top, just fizzing. And I remember staying there for what seemed like an eternity. And then the judges said to me, "Would you like to step off the stage?" And I vacated the stage, exit stage left, never to be seen from again. Pretty traumatic for, my 10-year-old little self. And never wanted to speak in front of people again, had horrible nerves over that. And then I was able to work through that though, because my parents had me work with a lady who I would just give one-on-one speeches to her, start off, short speeches, and then got a little bit longer. And then we would bring in a couple more people like my parents or my sister or whoever. And eventually I got to the point where I went to high school and I was able to speak in front of the class and give speeches and stuff like that still didn't love it, but without too much problem. So as parents, you want your kid to be able to do tough things. You want them to be able to handle, whatever life throws at them, and you want them to be stable. And you understand that sports is a training ground for doing these difficult things and for working through some of those stressors that we're going to experience later on in life. But perhaps we need to take a look at ourselves as parents and consider if maybe the way that we handle their stressful situations is actually making things maybe a little bit worse and maybe not developing them in the best way possible. So as we explore this topic, as with any topic, I think it's important that we're working from a common understanding, and that starts with defining our terms. Terms like stress, anxiety, worry, nerves, they can all be synonymous. So just make sure that we're understanding and working from a common foundation. We're going to define the term stress, and this is using the WHO, World Health Organization's definition of stress, and it reads, "Stress can be defined as a state of worry or mental tension caused by a difficult situation." And this is not the same, but is oftentimes coupled with anxiety. And essentially, stress, put it even simpler, stress are negative thoughts about what could happen. And that's different than what we're going to look at with nerves. Nerves we're going to define as a heightened sense of anticipation and preparation that often causes similar physiological symptoms to stress, including racing heartbeat, dry mouth, a queasy stomach, sweats, any number of other physiological symptoms as well. So the first question is, well, what causes stress in sports? And there's a lot of things that can cause stress in sports. Some of the most common ones would be tryouts. Those can be stressful. Earning playing time. Your athletes out there trying to be perfect or trying to perform well so that they can play more. That can be stressful. Coaches, wondering if they're going to yell at you, wondering what they're thinking about you, how they're evaluating you, stressful. Parents, that might be the biggest one sometimes. Friends who are watching you, you want to impress them. College scouts throughout these games, showcases, common stressful events. Trying to earn an accolade, all league or an MVP or whatever, playing for those accolades. Stats can be stressful. You want to keep your batting average over 300 or whatever. And those are all different stressors. There's a lot more, letting your teammates down and so many others. But those are some of the most common stressors. And what do all those things have in common? Well, 2 things. They all involve either 1, identity damage, or 2, quality of life consequences. So let's look at the first one. Identity damage can be caused when the athlete is concerned that a poor performance will change how others view them. And that can actually be one of the most stressful things for people, is because they want to be seen as a certain person, as a great athlete, as a great player, as the best player, as a legitimate player on the team. Whatever it might be, they're fearing that a poor performance will change how people view them. So that's the first thing that all these have in common, or might have in common, some of them have in common, is identity damage. The second one is quality of life consequences. And what that means is, if I fail, how will that impact my life? And that means that there's some real quality of life consequences out there. Maybe you're playing for a college scholarship and you're feeling like, if I perform well, I can get a college scholarship and be able to go to school, not have to go into tremendous debt. Or maybe it's a job interview and you're thinking, if I nail this job interview, I will get that job that I want. It's going to set up my family. We'll have a different life, the life that we've always dreamed of. I'll be able to buy that new home or whatever. These are real stressors that can be pretty taxing and heavy on people. And in the world of sports, though, oftentimes those quality of life consequences get over dramatized or blown out proportion a little bit. They're usually not totally fatal or final, those moments where an athlete has a shot to prove themselves, but sometimes they can occur. So that can be a real stressful situation, a real stressor in their life. But at the root of all these concerns is a fear of failure. That's what they're worried will happen, is failure. And this is completely legitimate, and there can be true consequences. So this leads to our next question, though. Is stress inevitable in sports? And I would argue that no, stress is not inevitable in sports. In fact, I would argue that nerves are inevitable, which we've defined already, and nerves can actually be a good thing. When I think about nerves in sports, I always think about Jocko Willink's video, the good video, where he talks about when difficult things happen or when things that seem bad happen, there can be some good in those, and to try and search for the good. And it's the same thing when you're feeling nervous or uncomfortable, there's a lot of good that can come from that. And when an athlete starts to understand that and lean into that and embrace it, that's when they can really unlock some of their athletic greatness in those moments. But we'll come back to that in a few minutes here. But stress is not good, and I would argue it is avoidable. It's not inevitable. So how can stress be avoided? Well, there's two ways that stress can be avoided. The first one is through the environment, and that's usually going to be from somebody or something outside of the athlete. That's going to be a coach or a parent. And secondly, the way that stress can be avoided is through personal strategies or steps. And we're going to look at both of these. So let's take a look at, first of all, the environment. And we're going to look at 4 environmental factors to reduce stress. The first one is reframing the term stress. And we talk about, as parents and coaches, we oftentimes talk about stress, anxiety, worry. But when we use these terms, what do we think is going to happen to the athletes? Our athletes are going to feel stressed, anxious, and worried. So rather than talking about how our athlete is stressed out because of the coach and how they're running practice and how there's so much on the line and how they need to be playing well or else the coach is going to bench them, all these types of conversations that we have with our athletes, they might seem kind of innocent or almost in passing, or like we're trying to hear them. We're trying to recognize what's going on in their minds. It's actually feeding the problem. So we need to be really aware and conscious of those conversations, and instead reframe these events as moments that are challenging. And just like Jocko Willink says in his good video, these are good things. These are opportunities for us to take something that could be challenging or difficult or stressful and instead see how they're really positive. If we reframe stress as nerves, we help our athletes to understand that those nervous emotions and feelings that they're having are actually that's just a response by their brain and their body in being prepared for athletic greatness. And once the athlete leans into that and believes that, now when they feel that, it's like, hey, I'm ready to be at my best. I'm ready to be great. And in fact, if I don't feel those things, I can't be my best. So I want to create that anticipation and that preparation, because that's when I know my body, my mind can be at its athletic best. So that's the first thing, reframe stress. The second environmental factor is to create an environment based on freedom versus fear. I always look forward to the first error that our team makes at the beginning of the season, because that gives me an opportunity to develop trust with my team. The first time the player makes an error, oftentimes you'll see coaches roll their eyes, throw their hands up, shrug their shoulders, mutter something under their breath, yell at the player. But Instead, we need to be really aware of how we respond. And in those moments, especially early on in the season, earn their trust, create that environment really intentionally by actually celebrating the player, praising them for something that they did right in that play. Odds are they did something correctly. So let's say the shortstop misses a ground ball. When he misses that ball, you have a few seconds that are really powerful, and it's important to already plan out what you're going to say. So when that shortstop misses that ground ball, I'm going to respond with, hey, way to attack the ball. Again, we're looking for some way to praise that athlete and foster that environment of freedom versus fear. Because we all know that confidence is huge for athletes. We all know that the mental game is huge, yet we do so many things to undermine that. Are there times when we need to discipline players? Absolutely. But that should be over things that they can control that are based more on attitude. Oftentimes, even people will say, well, we don't discipline over physical mistakes, but we do over mental mistakes. I would challenge people to consider that one as well, because mental acuity or mental skills, well, that's not a whole lot different than physical skills either. There's some players that mentally, like, it might sound bad, but they're just not there. Like, they're just not the brightest star in the sky. And yet we're still getting on them for like making these mental mistakes. Yeah, this kid can't remember what he just did 5 minutes ago, and we're going to expect him to like get signs right that we went over 3 weeks ago. Probably not going to happen. Take some ownership as the coach or the parent. Quiz your player more often over those signs. Yes, at some point we need to hold them accountable to gain those signs right. But even there, be careful, be intentional with how we're displaying them and how we're responding in those moments. The second fear that people oftentimes have, and that we can address through the environment, is they're scared of being yelled at. So be really intentional with how we respond to them. Never show up a player when you need to have those conversations, whether as a parent or a coach. Do it off to the side. We want the player, again, to be confident. We want them to feel safe out there to make mistakes, because when they feel safe to make mistakes, that's when you're going to see them out there just laying it rip, playing fast, playing without fear of failure. The third environmental factor, and to reiterate, the first one is reframing stress. The second one is freedom over fear. The third one is energy. Oftentimes, we need to actually replace fear or anxiety with something else. It's not enough to just say, don't do it or whatever, don't feel it. We need to replace it with something else, and a great replacement is energy. And that means that the athlete is actually like moving around. They're being loud, they're being talkative, they're signaling to people with communication. Those are all things that we can use in practice and instill in them with the thing in the back of our mind, with the idea that, hey, this is actually going to help reduce stress in those moments, as well as helping with communication, keeping people focused and things like that. And again, energy promotes freedom. It promotes focus, because when people are energetic, that's going to actually change physiologically what's happening, and that's going to help to replace that tension and fear. When people are tense, they're fearful, they're worried, they shrink. The chin goes down, the shoulders kind of come inwards, and when people are confident, the shoulders are back, the chin is up. They're projecting outwards rather than everything staying inward. So teaching players how to be energetic, and you have to teach that too. You can't just tell them be energetic. You need to actually, as parents and as coaches, show them what that means, what that looks like. And that's part of creating that environment. The fourth one is having proper expectations. Oftentimes we expect way too much of these players, and we're expecting them to be at a level that is not attainable. They innately know that. And when they're feeling those expectations and they kind of know in the back of their head, hey, I probably am not ready for this, that's when they're going to be even more tense, more fearful. So having proper expectations is huge. And really what all these four environmental factors come down to is creating a vacuum that's sucking the players in to this environment of freedom and confidence and playing stress-free versus an environment that is, kind of toxic and where people are tense. In addition to that, there's personal strategies that we can teach our children as well. And we're going to share 5 personal strategies very quickly here. The first one, again, is reframing their terms. And that means that they need to reframe in their own mind. And as we do this as parents with them, that's part of the environmental factor, they're going to be able to do that internally as well. So when they're feeling that kind of queasiness in their stomach, they actually see that as, oh, this is a good thing. That means that my mind, my body is prepared for athletic greatness. The second one is self-talk. Our words contribute to our thoughts. Our thoughts contribute to our feelings, and our feelings then send that response to our body. So Self-talk is huge. Challenge them with how they're talking to themselves. Be intentional about it. Like, I think having a mantra for your at-bats is great. It's a great idea. It's something I did and that we have all of our players work on and developing as a mantra that they say to themselves, but really focus on that self-talk. The third thing is be prepared. When athletes are prepared, they're going to be much more confident. We, again, cannot lie to ourselves. Well, maybe we can to a degree. I see some players are pretty delusional. But anyways, most people don't lie to themselves when it comes to being prepared. If you know that you're prepared, then in that moment, you're going to be more confident because you can think logically and go, okay, I'm ready for this. This is something I prepared for. I've done it well in practice. Okay, let's do this. But if you're not prepared, you're probably going to know. The fourth one is visualization. Visualization is immense. And when athletes visualize, they're able to put themselves into that moment, play it as many times as they want with great results. And then when they are now in action, they can match up with what they were just visualizing the day before, week before, night before, 5 minutes before, with what they're going to be confronting in that game. So visualization is huge. And then the fifth one is breathing. Teaching, look up box breathing on YouTube. You can find some good videos on that, but training them how to breathe. We always spend a couple practices on this, either with our high school teams or with my summer teams, but teach them how to breathe, reiterate that so that when they're in that moment, they can go back to, okay, I need to take my breath here. So those are 5 personal strategies that can help a lot with reducing stress. As we close down this series on mental stress, I hope that there's been some takeaways for you guys in working with your own children and your own athletes to hopefully increase the conversation, and if nothing else, increase the conversation with yourself in considering how can I mentor my child better? How can I help to put them in environments that are going to help them to enjoy the game more, be at their best, and most importantly, be people that are able to withstand more in life, be put into situations that they feel equipped for, and then thrive. Thank you once again for listening, and in our next series, we're going to take a deep dive into my favorite topic, which is how to systematically develop team culture. It will be a great listen for both parents and coaches alike.